In this next section, we'll be talking about the different types of coping strategies and when they're helpful and when they may not be so helpful. So you may wonder why a coping strategy may not be helpful, but we'll talk about that in a little while. It's not important for you to know or to remember that there's three main types of coping strategies. They've just been broken up, and I didn't come up with this, other people have, but it's a nice way to talk about it, so I will be talking about it in this way, and it'll give us a common language to be talking about it. So, three different types: avoidant or avoidance, instrumental, and psychological. And as I said before, coping strategies can be helpful or potentially harmful. So avoidance is coping by taking your mind off of it. We all know how to do that, not thinking about it. Instrumental, coping by finding a solution, a way to change something, really thinking about it and doing it in a different way. And psychological, coping by honoring your feelings and getting support. I'm hoping that this program will be both instrumental and psychologically supportive for you, and at times some of the guided relaxation may also be part of your avoidance strategy. So let's talk about avoidant coping. Helpful avoidance relaxes or rejuvenates you. We all know this. You know all about reading a book, watching a movie, playing with a pet, sometimes playing with children, going outside, seeing something beautiful, learning something new, growing a plant, taking a nap, playing a game. The list goes on, and I really invite you to add to this list. These are just some examples so you can understand how something can be helpful. But when is avoidance not helpful? Even all those enjoyable activities I talked about in the last slide can be unhelpful. And when they can be unhelpful is when you really need to do something and you don't. There's a difference between taking your mind off of it so you don't dwell. Taking your mind off of your discomfort by reading can help you feel more comfortable. But if you really need to call the doctor and you're not, avoidance isn't helping. When you're being an ostrich with your head in the sand, guess what? Ostriches, when their heads are in the sand, can have their butts up in the air. Makes us pretty vulnerable. And spending most of the day with an entertainment that zones you out doesn't really help. Reading all day long can be wonderful if you've given yourself the opportunity, I'm just going to sit and read, or I'm going to watch these movies. But if you're doing it to avoid something and things are not getting any better, then this isn't helpful. If you're avoiding making necessary appointments or doing something different that you really need to do, it's not helpful at all. Okay, guess what? There's even more unhelpful avoidance. Smoking, drinking too much, and overutilizing prescription medication, over or under eating. Yes, having a treat when we're anxious is wonderful. Having treats all the time is not so helpful for the body. Withdrawing from friends, family, and activities because you don't want people to see you struggling with MS symptoms or they can do things you can't do, that doesn't help. Sleeping too much. Just going into bed, putting the covers over your head and avoiding the world. It's not going to help. And the opposite of that, filling up every minute of the day with some activity to avoid being with yourself, with your feelings, or looking at some problem you might be having, also is not helpful. So let's look at some helpful things again. Instrumental coping. Instrumental coping is coping by finding new strategies. This is a lot about what this program is about, giving you some ideas of different ways to deal with things. Learning to use an adaptive device, or any way that you can adapt and do it differently. Consulting with an expert about what's going on is a great way. Asking others how you've how they've dealt with it, how might be able to do it differently. So you'll have that opportunity on the phone calls in self-help groups or just calling a friend or some of the websites that you can go to and chat rooms about getting some positive ideas about how to do things differently. And learning to do it a new way, a different way, can be a great way of instrumental coping. Yes, instrumental coping also has a downside. When you spend hours most days trying to learn more about MS, this is more typical of people that are newly diagnosed that can just lose themselves in the research. Having information is helpful, and some people, the more information you have, the more comfortable you feel. But if everything else is getting pushed away so you can do more research, it's not helpful. Putting pressure on yourself to find a way. Tenacity is really important, and I don't know how to live with MS without being tenacious. But putting your pressure on yourself to find a way, exhausting yourself looking for answers, spending so much time focused on something that you're not having fun is not helpful. Sometimes there may not be a way to do it. There might not be a way to do it the way you want to do it. There might be another way to accomplish the whole thing. But if you're so tenacious, you're not going to find out anything differently. Psychological coping is coping by recognizing that you're having a hard time and honoring your feelings. What do I mean by that? Being able to say to yourself, yeah, I'm really frustrated, angry, upset about this. We usually don't have a hard time saying to ourselves, I really feel good about this sometimes, but it's not one of the harder ones. So going to a healthy self-help group, what does that mean? Self-help groups that actually help, that don't stay focused on the problem but support people to look for different ways to do it, are healthy support groups, self-help groups. Talking with someone that's supportive. Psychotherapy can be helpful. Writing about it, crying, getting angry, and then releasing it. It's really important sometimes to just let yourself have the feelings and then release it, move on. Meditation and prayer is a good way of psychological coping, and I've already talked about if prayer is not your thing, that's fine. And when is psychological coping not so helpful? If you're spending most days in tears or being angry, you're not coping. The feelings are overwhelming you. So that's time to get some help. If you're spending so much time with the problem that you're not looking at making it easier, I talked about that not so healthy self-help group that stays stuck in a problem and not a possible solution. Now, if the solution you want is a cure for MS, then it's really hard to find a way to make your life easier right now, today, before a cure. If you're hurting yourself, making it harder on yourself, and if you're spending so much time talking about it, thinking about it, getting support about it, writing about it, healing yourself, that it becomes avoidance of taking action, it's not helpful. So I want you just to have a chance to review and think about these things, and there will be an assignment at the end to give you more of an opportunity to look to see what your favorite coping ways are and how effective it is for you. So just a couple of more slides about different helpful coping skills, slightly different way of looking at things. Learn when and how to say yes and when to say no. It's a big one. Be realistic about how much you can do in an hour in a day. Learn to be proud of yourself for doing what you can and taking a break. And this is really difficult for people that might have been able to do something that you're now having trouble doing. Ask for help. You may be able to do it if you get some help. And you know how people say, don't sweat the little things? So a way to do that is break down really big tasks or problems into small pieces and then go back to don't sweat the little things. Admit when you're wrong or in over your head or your way isn't working and ask for help. And a really big important one with living with MS is let go of control. If it doesn't get done or it isn't done your way, ask yourself, will someone die? If not, then try to let it go. But it may be really important, and okay, no one will die, but you don't want to just let it go. So that's a time to ask for help. Some more ideas about helpful ways to cope. Try to avoid people that increase your stress. Okay, what if you say, what about if it's a family member? Well, there's ways that we'll talk about that, and your log will help you determine this because you'll get to know who you're talking to and who you're interacting with that's causing you stress and who isn't. Learn about what stressful situations are for you and avoid them or adjust to them. Sometimes avoidance, as we talked about, is not helpful. A way to deal with it to make it easier is helpful. Don't do anything until it hurts. Listen to your body and learn not to push so hard. Some people become so afraid that they don't push at all. This is about the balance. Voice your concerns in a healthy way instead of resenting things or blowing up. Be willing to compromise. Learn how to budget and manage your time and energy. That's a big one. And if all else fails, adapt to the situation and adjust your attitudes. Now, I know this is really easy for me to say, and these sound nice. It's just something that I want you to take into consideration. Many of these you probably heard of before. It's just a nice review for you.